Okay, so I'll go ahead with the presentation. This presentation is somewhat a bit personal for a couple of reasons. First of all, I am very new to the conference scenario because this is my first conference and my first conference presentation. Second of all, this is my first research project too, right? And it comes from a very personal story. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to introduce myself a bit. I am Anvita. I am originally from West Bengal, India. I've worked in India for about 5 to 6 years as a teacher in an inclusive school. That's where I met with children with special needs. I took interest in working with them, but I found that I wouldn't get to learn a lot. I wouldn't get as much training as I want here. And that's when I started looking for options where I could go and learn from. And that's how I ended up in Texas A&M University as a PhD student. I am a PhD student in A&M in the Department of Educational Psychology. And I work in SPED. I work with children with autism who are minimally vocal or non-vocal sometimes. So this project comes into contact, this comes into context with my GA shift. For my GA shift, I work into a project called Coach to Communicate. Now, what do we do in Coach to Communicate? We basically train parents of children with autism And these children are mostly minimally vocal or non-vocal, or sometimes they are vocal but they have other communication needs. And we train the parents of these children to use certain naturalistic, certain basic strategies to use at home and help their children enhance their communication skills. Now, I started working on that. What happened is I started coaching parents who have migrated very recently from India to Texas. When I started coaching them, I realized that they were having some problem with the language of the coaching manual. They were having problem identifying themselves with the examples, the illustrations that we give them. I keep telling them about using iPad. I keep telling them about using Go Talk Now and other things which are not present in India. So these parents who've traveled just from India to the US don't know what is Go Talk Now, don't know how to use that. And they would come to me, they would say that, well, you're not making my life easier. I don't know what you're talking about. So I went into my advisor. I asked her that what can we do? And she said that why don't you go back home and think about what you can do to help them? Because you are entrusted with these people and it's your responsibility to help them. While I was looking for options, what happened was I came to a solution which is a long-term solution. The short-term solution for me was, to meet with them more often and take them through the process more critically by, showing them how to use the applications, or maybe, telling them, suggesting them books they could read or they could get in the market or toys they could buy and stuff. But then I was thinking about a long-term solution. I wouldn't be able to, meet every parent every day because there's a time constraint. So the long-term solution for me was to kind of find out if I could adapt the manual and I could make it more, culturally adaptive for the Indian parents. That's where this project pops in. Okay. Now, what already is there? We know that there has been a lot of, a lot of support is there. A lot of therapy centers, schools offer different kind of therapy, and then we also have the ABA supporting us with research and data and technology all the time. We also see that there have been research in terms of how effective these interventions really are. And then we also there are different kind of communication interventions we come up in the form of social stories, in the form of prompting, prompt fading, reinforcement, peer mediated instructions. In fact, the Coach to Communicate project uses a lot of these things. So I was like, if we are doing things and these are proven to be effective, then there should be a solution wherein the Indian parents would also be able to benefit from it, right? So once I started looking for these things, how I could accommodate, I saw that the manual can be, broken down into further smaller submodules wherein I could incorporate pictures, examples, narratives that are close to the Indians. And I wouldn't have to tell them that, I wouldn't have to tell the parents to buy books that the American children read. I could just tell them to use, social media, to use YouTube or Google or something. Find out the stories, rhymes that we use in India to bring up our children. And if I could, show them these resources, if I could bring them closer to these resources that they can use to do this thing, it will be easier for them. Now, this is where the project comes. And what what I started was, of course, we planned out what are we going to do. Initially, we planned to do two things. Initially, we planned to just tell them about different kind of sources from which they could acquire, even if they are in the US, they could acquire access to stories that are present in India. Thank you. So that are present in India, stories that are the rhymes and a lot of language acquiring tools that are available out there as resources in the internet. And the second thing that we would do is we would plan activities for them that Indian kids generally do, right? But then what happened was, now this is a spoiler. So we recruited two parents who had recently migrated to Texas from India. Both of them had children who were under autism spectrum and who were non-vocal. What I did was I did the adaptations and I showed it to them while I would coach them. Every week when we would meet, I would give them feedback on their implementation, on which whatever doubts they have, um, and I would ask for their feedback on whether they are finding my ways to be good enough for them, to be understandable for them. Now, so this is one example of how I changed it. I guess you guys won't be able to see it properly. So what I did was I changed sentences a bit because mostly all of us in India, we have English as second language. So we don't have the extensive vocabulary and we don't have the fluency that the American society, the American people would have, right? Even if we are very good in English. And many of them actually struggled because, especially the mothers, they would struggle because they are not that fluent talking. And they would always come up with this thing that I want my child to learn Tamil. I want my child to learn Hindi. I don't want my child to only learn English. Right? So what I tried to do is I tried to change the sentences a bit, which would be shorter or simpler for the people. I also tried to incorporate some pictures because I saw that when I gave them 37 slides without pictures, they were like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm leading the program. And that would end up in a very bad situation for the program, for the parents, for the children also. So what I did was I tried finding relevant pictures that would kind of, make them understand what my slide talks about. So here you'd see it's written prepare the environment with items or activities that would moderate with the individual to initiate an interaction with others. Now it's a little difficult for people who've just traveled to the US. So what I did, I just said, sorry, I can't read it from there, and I didn't memorize it by heart. So I said, keep the preferred items close but out of reach, and let them see it, let them ask for it before they get access to it. So this was easier to understand. And another spoiler, when I started coaching the parents, I saw that most of the Indian parents were not comfortable using social praise for their children. Now, my big highlight was even if they have any kind of vocal approximation, praise them, motivate them, tell them that they're doing a good job, and push them to do more, right? So that's why I also chose this slide because that's like the big point for me to all the parents in India or all the parents who travel from India to Texas that the first thing you should start doing is acknowledge their effort. Tell them that they're doing a good job. You can see that they're trying, and try and support them, comfort them first, and then gradually push them to do better. So, now, how did we come up with this problem? Why India and how India? Very, to be very honest, because I am from India. When I was teaching, I mean, I couldn't find the very, what to say, something very critical with this. So I thought I'd go with the honest thing. I am from India. I started teaching in India, and I saw that India has a lot of things in paper. We have come across a very long way. But when it comes to the teachers in class, when it comes to the children, when it comes to the parent, little do we know how to use these things which are there in paper, right? And I thought that it would be easier for me to connect with the Indian population because I am an Indian. And most importantly, I feel that in the entire context, parents are the one who are struggling the most. There are teachers who get trained. There are therapy centers who have professionals. There are, paraprofessionals. There are people who come up with, researchers, professors who are working with them. But what about parents? There's a diagnosis of the child. There's a big stigma still here in India. We don't know as parents what we should do. I've had a lot of parents, they feel shattered the moment their child has been diagnosed because they don't know what's going to happen to those children. They don't know how to help the child. When I was a teacher during the COVID, I would get calls constantly because the parent would say that I don't know what he wants. I don't know what she wants. Can you help me with this? How do I manage her? How do I engage her? So I thought that because I can connect with the Indian population pretty easily, and because parents are the one who need a lot of support, so I try to step in and become the big figure and try to kind of help them out however I can. So this particular slide kind of talks about whatever I just said to you guys. Basically, it also says that why parents? As I said, because parents are the one who are going to be with the child for the most amount of time at home, after the therapy, after the school, after peer interaction, everything. The child would come back home, and if parents know how to take care of them, if parents know some ways in which they can support them, not only do the child, not only do the children feel comfortable, but then the parent also feels comfortable that yeah, I am being able to support my child. I have accommodations for them. Now the big questions. If you have a research project, you must have some questions, right? So what I am trying to find out is I'm trying to find out first of all if there is a relationship in terms of the cultural adaptivity, whether it makes the lives of Indian parents based in Texas better, even Indian parents in India better, if we use the same C2C curriculum model with the adaptations made. The second thing also, I would try to compare if implementing is easier for the Indian parents in India with my adaptations or easier for Indian parents in Texas. Again, this is a little ahead, this information is a little ahead of the slides, but I am going to also do a parallel study in India, and I would be collaborating with 2 universities in India who would be helping me recruit parents who are based in India. And we would also train them with the same coaching manual that I have adapted, and we would take their feedback as well to see if the adapted manual is working for them too. That will help me basically compare the cross-cultural adaptability theory. Now, what are my objectives? How am I going to reach my goal? What I'm going to do is I am of course going to do a socio-cultural variation in terms of resources. I'm going to add socio-cultural variations in the existing manual. Number two, what I'm going to do is I will try to study the relevance as well as the increase in effectiveness of the studies. How do I do that? So, in the Coach to Communicate project, what we do is, as parent coaches, we meet the parent every week. Every week, the parent gives us a video of about 2 to 3 minutes, wherein they practice with the child. After they submit the videos to us, we watch the video, we prepare a feedback for them, we talk to them about it, and we also ask them to share their experiences. So what I'm going to do is I will not only take their verbal experience, but I will give them a Google form sheet, and I will ask them some specific question as to whether they are feeling comfortable about what they are learning, whether they are being able to implement it, whether they are confident in implementing whatever they are learning from. And oh, I'm sorry, the previous one. Yeah. So, and the last thing that we would do is if the manual makes it easier for the parents to use the strategies. So, for that, what we do is we would be taking data on the effectiveness of their use and how often they are implementing it with their kids. Now, how do we take that data? We would be asking the parents to share a video of 2 to 3 minutes every alternative day or once in every 3 days. So we have a minimum criteria of having at least 3 videos per week, so that we know that over the 3 weeks they have over the week at least 3 times they have had the chance to practice with the kids. And we typically ask the parents to use different type of settings, maybe home, the grocery store, the swimming lesson, wherever the child goes. And why do we tell them to do this? Is because we don't need any kind of extra tools. We don't want them to, prepare extensively only for the time they are going to use these strategies while they are working with the child. It can be a simple car ride where, mom can ask, well, what do you see outside? And they can model questions, they can prompt answers, they can also create communicative temptations while they are riding in the car, right? You don't need toys there, you don't need any other setup over there. So now, how do we reach our goal? Big thing was, there's a little story for this slide. So I went to my advisor, I told her I've come up with a solution, this is going to be it. She listened to me for half an hour and she said, India, it's a big subcontinent. Texas, very, very big state. How are you going to find parents? And are you going to literally ask every parent to do this? So how would you know what things do you have to adapt? How would you know whether the adaptation works? Then we came up with a solution. We broke the project into 2 different phases. And I'm still at the first phase, wherein we recruited 2 parents, keeping the inclusion and exclusion criteria. We only got 2 parents. And I say this phase is almost completed because I have already done the adaptations, but we are planning to recruit 2 more parents and run the adapted manual with them, get their feedback, and then come back to India and start the second phase. In the second phase, what are we going to do? We will be recruiting parents who are based in India and the parents who have children under the spectrum and who have communication skill necessities, right? And then we will be coaching them just as we do in Texas. via Zoom because we can't meet these parents in person, so we will be using Zoom. And in the same way, in the very same way, we are going to ask the parents to give us feedback using the same kind of Google Sheet that we were using for the parents in Texas. Now, a little bit with the methods. As I said, the backbone of this project would be the cross-cultural adaptivity theory, because the theory says that humans undergo a process of cultural assimilation when they move from one environment to the other. Now, while this assimilation happens, there's an interaction between the cultures, more like a transaction. We try to give some of our culture to the place where we have traveled to, and we take in some of their culture, and a beautiful confluence happens. That is the backbone of my project. That is the logic to my project here. Okay, I'm going to rush a little bit because I am running out of time. I'm sorry about that. The researcher, the first author here is me myself, and I identify as a South Asian individual. I have experience in working with children with autism and communication needs, and I am mostly interested in studying cross sections of culture and naturalistic communication interventions. Now, as a person from SPED, why only culture? Because I have done my bachelor's and master's in sociology and not in special education. So I have this love for different kinds of cultures, and it excites me to see how culture plays a very, very key role in everything that we do. The second author is a tenured professor in the SPED Department of Educational Psychology in Texas A&M, and she mostly focuses her research focuses on augmentative and alternative communication interventions of non-verbal, minimally verbal, non-vocal children. The third author identifies as a professor in the Department of Sociology, Presidency University, Kolkata. So this is one of the universities we are collaborating in India with. And she works in the lines of diversity, inclusion, and disability studies. The other members of the research team are all actively involved in studying cultural variations, diversity, and special education. Now, the recruitment and the demographics. So for the recruitment, again, this is a very long slide with a lot of things written in them. Please excuse me for that. But the highlight is the inclusion criteria for the recruitment for the first phase was that you speak English as a primary language. Now, when I say English as a primary language, that doesn't mean English as first language, but the primary language of communication. Because India is a very, very vast subcontinent with a lot of dialects, and I do not know all of them. I only know two. So I wouldn't be able to talk to all parents with their vernacular dialects. So I thought that English should be the primary mode of communication. And we would also prefer the child to speak English or the child to understand English, because when the parents are taking the videos, we would want them to use English in the videos too. The child for our inclusion criteria should be of 3 to 8 years, because I'm mostly focused on elementary population. Both parents and child should be resident of Texas at present. Now, this doesn't have to do anything with me personally, but then the Coach to Communicate program that is funded by the federal government, and they have a criteria that you have to have participants who are in Texas. So, and also for parents who migrated from India, the migration should have happened within the last 10 years, just to narrow down the search. The exclusion criteria were if you are not an English if you don't speak English as primary language, or the child has not been identified with autism, the child being younger or older than the age bracket of 3 to 8, and parents not residing in Texas currently, right? Uh, the second phase has almost all the inclusion and exclusion criteria similar to the first one, except the point of migration. Now, in the second phase, we are going to come to India and coach the parents here in India, so they don't need to be migrating to US, right? So that's the only thing that's different. The two parents who were in the first phase of the study had children who were diagnosed with autism. Both the children were non-vocal. They were 3 to 8 years old. One was 3 years old, and the other one was 7 year old. Um, so what we did was we explained to them what is the study going to be like. We explained the process to them. We also explained to them that at any point of time they could pull themselves out. So it was completely voluntary for them. And we also informed them that they have full right to non-disclosure of personal credentials, because this is something that A&M takes a lot of care about. And so, for the sake of this project, since we were going to do the second phase via Zoom, so in the first phase also we met the parents via Zoom. And we did it on a weekly basis. So what we did was we provided them with written and verbal feedback for the videos. Most of the meetings were about 30 minutes. And on the second, third, and the fourth session, so when I say session, I mean the weeks, we also asked them to share specific feedback on the cultural adaptability of the coaching program, like whether they found the implementation to be easier, whether it was easier to access them, it was understandable for them or not. Now, what next? I promise this is the end of whatever I'm saying. What we want to do is the plan ahead is the second phase. After we are done with the first phase, after we are done implementing the adaptive manual with the two parents who are waiting in Texas, we will be recruiting about 10 parents in India, keeping the inclusion and exclusion criteria of the second phase in mind. Then we will be meeting the parents via Zoom, and we will be asking them to fill up a pre-survey. So the pre-survey and the post-survey is something we are going to introduce in the second phase, and we did not do in the first one. You will ask me, why did you do that? There are two reasons. One, because A&M told me that you have to have that. And two, because when the parents were recruited through the C2C project, they were already given a survey, so we knew about their prior knowledge. In India, we did not get anything like that. So what I will be doing is I will be giving them a survey just to understand how much they already know, what they know about, and what would they want to learn from us, right? And then to do the next step to get their feedback, we will be giving them a weekly social validity checklist, a Google form, wherein they are going to tell us how the intervention is going on their end, how the reading and the comprehending is going on at their end. The last thing which we will do is the post survey to understand the difference from where they started and where they ended. This whole thing should take place about 4 to 6 weeks. We plan 4 weeks, but then we keep 2 weeks extra for follow-up or for maintenance. If there is a dropout, if there is, life happens and different things happen with us, right? So they might need some time, and we want to stay flexible. Now, the last thing is, as I said, A&M has this project of C2C, which is funded by the federal government, which would allow only working in Texas. So what we are working on right now is acquiring funding for doing the work here in India. Once that is done, we will be doing the second phase. We have applied to a couple of grant organizations. We will be hearing back at the end of summer, and hope to start the second phase by fall. This is the end to my presentation. The next two slides actually talk about the references I have used for my literature review and for resources. If you guys have any questions.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
Anandita, very interesting study, and actually your journey very similar to my journey of working in India for a while and then finding out you need more skills, and so then going to the US to study. So congratulations on that journey, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I just have one question on the methods of your study. How many parents are you trying to target for phase one? You said it's 2 parents, and I'm assuming that's
in phase one, we have 4 parents. We've already worked with 2, and we are also going to try and do it to more parents who are in waiting right now. So they have cleared all the inclusion and exclusion criteria. They've cleared their survey, everything, and we'll be working with them. Right now, actually, I'm working with them.
And your phase 2 to evaluate the effectiveness of your culturally adapted package.
Yes. So in the phase 2, what we planned was to get as many parents we could in India, but then of course there are 5 more will see that. So
But depends on the design of your study, right?
that depends on the design of my study, but then here in India, the universities told me that let's first see how many we can recruit. So, and that also largely depends on the funding that we get. So once the funding comes, we can see how much we can support, how many parents we can support. Based on that, I might have to redesign the study.
Just out of curiosity, I happen to be friends with Birdie. So
Oh, she's my advisor.
Yeah, I know. I figured it out. I would imagine they would follow a single case design, so you could probably get away with fewer than 10.
Yes, yeah. That has been, a running situation, because I'm a qualitative person and she's a quantitative. So we kind of like came somewhere in between, and we decided we are going to start with the survey and eventually move to a single case.
Gotcha.
She's pulling me towards that. That's work in progress.
Okay.
I had one question,
Sure.
less about the science and more about the grant organizations who you have approached about funding the study in India.
Yeah.
Can you name them?
Yeah, of course. So there is Netaji Subhash National University, which has their own grant organization for children with autism. So we have applied there. We have also applied to the Health Department of West Bengal, the Government Health Department of West Bengal, who have fundings for research and awareness programs for children with intellectual disabilities.
So these are Indian-based organizations that.
Yes.
So government of West Bengal means you can only work with children in
No,
Kolkata,
so I
West
found
Bengal.
out that they don't have that kind of a criteria. As long as we are being accountable to them as to how we are using the money, and as long as they are being acknowledged as the sponsors, we can work with children from other states as well.
And Nandita, can I get your email address at some point?
Of course. Should I write that down for you?
Thank you.
I have a terribly long name.
Sorry, my name's longer, so.
Keep it complete then. Actually, thank you to all of you to be patient and listen to me. It could be tedious. Thank you. Oh, sure. Could you email me right now, because I don't have my laptop's not working, so I don't.
Next couple of months.
Sure, absolutely. And after the presentation, so since the presentation's over, I have my parents here because this is my first conference presentation. And thank you for coming. Okay, now it's over to Radhika. I'm done.
Hi. Email ID there in the sheet. You have a marker. I think there are sheets there. Yes. Please, email ID.
Oh, okay.
Whoever wants.
Sure. I write my email ID here. If anybody wants it.
Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you've heard a lot about the languages in India, and my presentation is going to be on that. I'm presenting on behalf of a colleague of mine, Aditi Ghosh, who is our language coordinator at Gateway. And so I'll try and answer questions as best I can, but if you have any, I'll direct you to okay. To give you a little bit of context, we're a not-for-profit organization based in Bombay. We work with few students. We consider ourselves a lab school where we try and experiment, learn what works, and then partner with other organizations to see if we can spread it in a larger context. We work with kids from 7 to 18, and then we also have an employment program from 18 plus. We also work with schools, try to see for inclusion. We have a research cell, and this is among one of the practices that we're trying to see what works in our context. To give you a sense of the student profile at Gateway, it's mild to moderate disabilities. They have difficulties with rhetoric, with language. Majority of our students have language difficulties, spontaneous language. Some, I think majority of them have English as an additional language, and English language proficiency. So we're using this word translanguaging. I don't know if is anybody in the room familiar translanguaging? Okay. So what do we mean about this? Translanguaging is pretty recent in the literature. Previously, there were words like code switching being used. Translanguaging positions itself differently from code switching because code switching assumes you have two language systems and you as a speaker move between them. Translanguaging assumes a unified language system and that the speaker uses depending on context. That's essentially what it is, but code switching is part of translanguaging. What do we mean by it? We mean by spontaneous translanguaging in the classroom for meaning making as well as planned translanguaging. The teacher can have actually plan activities where students have to work in two languages depending on two or more languages depending on the skill set of the students. So many, I'm not going to go into this, but it's a no-brainer that you need multiple languages. And I think all of our contexts, we all come from contexts where there are multiple languages. I'm not familiar with the US, but I think you guys have large immigrant population and in Spanish and multiple other languages. So we all know there is need for multiple languages for sense of belonging, for meaning making, for multiple reasons. In India especially, you heard, we have 22 official languages, so many other dialects. There's need to bring in as many languages as we can. We are very happy with our current policies. You've heard from the speakers that we've had that on paper, we're moving in the right direction. We had a recent change in our policy. We have a 3-language formula. Previously, English was mandatory. Now it's not. And no language actually is stipulated. So schools can choose, districts can choose which 3 languages to use. Yeah, I'll talk to you about the challenges of that also, but yeah, okay. We have many enablers that are supporting multiple languages, tech being a big support over here. We have so many of our students, all of us, I think, have I have a Hindi this thing on my phone. Most of us have multiple dictionaries that we use. AIs come in, multi-sensory. So many things that are helping us to use multiple languages, but there are lots of barriers to multiple languaging. Attitudes being a big concern. Um, you will find that families want their students to be educated in English medium schools. Despite the fact that the families have nobody speaks English at home, so your child is a first generation English language learner, which no support from home, and oftentimes the teachers themselves do not have the languages. So languaging is used this thing, but it's in an English medium school, so your textbook, all of your things are in English. Very often schools come down on using another language in the class. So it's frowned upon if you want to use, if you're an English medium school and you pull another language in, it's frowned upon. So there are lots of things in the literature that talk about why multiple languages are a concern and not adopted or not talked about. It is being used but not talked about that much. Malika, you can, yeah, I just want the lower part of this thing also. Thank you. So this is just, I'll go, that's a little background. This is what we do at Gateway. This is how our language program works. We know the profiles of our students, we pull from different standards. So we use different standards, but we will choose and pick and choose as per the child. Everybody does go through some sort of a board exam or not at 13, 14, but before that we have a lot of flexibility in our curriculum. We use multi-sensory explicit instruction. We have co-teaching teams. We're pretty lucky at Gateway that we have co-teaching, and we also have the support of therapists coming in. Most of our teachers are bilingual, many trilingual, so then moving between languages is very possible. These are some of our formats. We try and do whole group, but then we do mixed group instruction. We also have pull-out and push-ins and intervention groups. These are some of the formats that language is taught. And you can pull the next one also. Thank you. This is Aditi. What do we use translanguaging for? So I'm going to show you a video of that. But this is kind of the things that we would use it for. Meaning making, sharing experiences, scaffolding, instruction. These are some of the formats that she used. I'd rather show the video of it. Okay, so this is an example. This is one of our teachers. She is doing a fluency class. There's no audio. She is doing a fluency class. So the medium of instruction is English, but for comprehension, she uses translanguage. I should have checked this out. No. Sorry. Okay. What we'll do is I would have liked you to see this, you get a sense of how she is doing this. She moves between the languages for the different students. So she moves between Hindi, Marathi, and English as per the need of the child. But don't worry, we're not going to get much from this video if you don't see it. If we work on the thing, we'll come back to it later. I do have some excerpts for what this could look like. Right? So that is why the teacher is doing it. That's kind of supporting meaning making. But there's also spontaneous translanguaging because you have to create a culture where multiple languages are accepted. So this is kind of how you do this when you're teaching sounds. The teacher says shh, says ship, shells. What else can you think of? Sham. So it's okay because it's the same sound. Shift. It's absolutely fine because it's the same sound, and you accept these responses. Some more examples. Trying to make connects and using their background knowledge. An old man is wearing a pagdi like a Gujarati saint. So a turban like a Gujarati emoji. He's looking at the picture and trying to understand this. Um, Asking a clarifying question in both languages. I could not connect to this. Could you explain this, please? मैं connect नहीं कर पाया. क्या आप फिर से explain करेंगे, please? So just switching between the languages and accepting that it's absolutely fine. And the thing is that because of our cultural context, we can understand this. Most of us can get by. So it's accepting. Oh yeah, can you? Yeah, this.
Let's go to the project.
No. You want to do now?
Yeah, let me see if I can do it.
Okay. So if I take off the projector, then it won't.
Yeah, focus, yes.
But it won't be. But then I couldn't see it. Without seeing it, you won't understand.
Yeah, just let that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I should let you do this thing. So that was when that's clarifying questions. That's kind of very personal. But I think this is what is really how translanguaging supports understanding in the classroom. So this is the peer interaction. All right. We are teaching language, and we teach kids to make different kinds of connections in language. So one of the kids says, "I have a connection. When I was born, my grandfather was so happy, he was crying." Now, this is to the word overwhelmed. All right. And the second student says, "वो खुशी के आंसू है." And that is a phrase in Hindi. So they're bringing figurative expression over here to help the other understand. And that really supports meaning making in a classroom. The same thing you have happening in a small group instruction, where we see a runway and the other child says, "What is a runway?" So then he goes on to explain, "देखो ये runway है, इस पे glider plane take off करेंगे, whoosh उड़ जाएंगे." And he's showing him that. And then he say, "वो runway जो airport में होता है." The second student becomes the support for this, and this is happening in classrooms with limited language. This is a group with functional, going on a functional track. So it's been really very empowering. We didn't make this, we didn't have this in our early years. This is a new direction, because again we came with the families, came with one of the things that many of our students have had to do when they come in is choose a language. So many families, when you're diagnosed with a disability, you're told pick a language. And our families have picked English because they thought that would support the child, even though home language is something very different. And so we were battling it because there is a common understanding, a myth, that if you want a child who has a disability to learn a language, you have to pick a language. And I think that that's something we're trying to break with translanguaging. So we have seen, this is a very, what we're sharing is purely observational. This is very early days in this. We're trying it in our classes. We're slowly getting this across school. But we have seen self-advocacy, we have seen initiation, conversation repair. We have seen actually students beginning to use English. So it's actually a support. So the common notion that you have to, if you want to learn English, that immersion model is something that we know from research that doesn't work. But this is actually where we're showing families that immersion is not the answer. You have to look for dual language practices and something like translanguaging. So our next goal, Monica, sorry, can you go back? As I said, this is observations. It's a very small sample size, and we haven't looked at it in other school settings yet. But that's what we want to do right now. That's something first we want to look deeper at our practices, start documenting them to see what works. Because I'm sure in all special needs schools, this is something that we do. It's not something we highlight. It's not mentioned in literature. There is very little literature on trans languaging in general, and definitely in India. There's just one Leena Mukhopadhyay that I'm seeing does work in trans languaging. So that's something that we want to do, and then start working with other inclusive schools to break that mindset of English and see if we can bring a practice like this. Thank you. And you can keep this. Yeah, we get it.
The Jackson. Just one thing, it's just certain.
Thank you.
Just because of the way it was spelled.
Alright. While that's happening, if that happens, any questions? I'll be happy.
Yes. Yes, Radhika, I'm very happy that both the speakers, you specified that language, more than one language. Like now, I hear from other special schools that they are insisting the parents to speak only in English, and the child also is specified like he has to speak only in English. So it becomes I'm imagining the home situation. It becomes very artificial when we speak in another language, like not our mother tongue, and another language. It becomes artificial. And good that you all came up with because we deal with students who know only Hindi, only Kannada,
Yes.
only Tamil, only Telugu, and understand.
Sorry, please.
No, it's okay.
Great job, मैम ने किड्स कहाँ रखी मैम ने अपनी किड्स कहाँ रखी आरव चोपड़ा put his kids into the van. The man put his kids into the van. What did the man do? Put his kids in the van. Man ने क्या किया? Man मध्ये काय टाकलं? He put his kids. काय टाकलं? Kids. कुठे टाकलं? Man मध्ये. Great job. Man ने kids कहाँ रखी? Man ने अपनी kids कहाँ रखी? आरव चोपड़ा. Van ने रखी. Where did he put his kids? In the van. In the van. That's right.